Later this afternoon, I got to them. Oh boy, and I can't say who they are, and I can't really say.
That's fine.
And I can't really say what they told me, but it's ironclad. It's 1,000% true. Okay, I know exactly what happened to the kids. The kids are alive.
The morning of May 2nd, 2025, began with a silence that would soon haunt the province of Nova Scotia. At 10:01 a.m., a 911 call fractured the quiet of Lansdowne Station. Maylee Brooks Murray's voice was on the line, reporting the unthinkable. 2 children, Lily and Jack Sullivan, had simply vanished from their rural property. They were last seen the night before, tucked away in the safety of their home. Now, while the family slept, the children had supposedly wandered away into the dense, unforgiving Atlantic wilderness. RCMP officers arrived within 26 minutes. What they found was a property bordering a labyrinth of thick brush and steep, jagged terrain. By the time the sun began to set on that first day, the scale of the response had exploded. Over 160 ground search and rescue volunteers were on their knees, crawling through the undergrowth. Helicopters with thermal imaging hummed overhead, and K-9 units tore through the tree-line. But as the hours turned into days, a chilling reality began to set in. In most missing persons cases, there's a trail, a dropped shoe, a bent branch, a footprint in the mud. Here, there was nothing. No thermal heat signatures from the drones. No barking from the tracking dogs. Just 8.5 kilometers of silent woods that seemed to have swallowed 2 human beings whole. This wasn't just a search. It was the beginning of one of the most intensive operations in Canadian history. But as the investigation shifted from a frantic rescue to a cold analysis of facts, the veteran officers leading the charge realized they were facing something they had never seen before. Chief Superintendent Dan Morrow, a man with 33 years of policing under his belt, looked at the empty forest and the lack of evidence and eventually admitted to the world, "I've never seen it across my career. How do 2 children disappear from a yard without leaving a single trace?" As the investigation entered its second week, the RCMP didn't just search the woods. They began to deconstruct the lives of everyone involved. The Northeast Nova Major Crime Unit took the lead, supported by forensic identification specialists and the behavioral sciences group. This wasn't just about looking for 2 children anymore. It was about looking for a why. Between May and July 2025, investigators filed 12 search warrants. They weren't just looking under rocks. They were looking into the digital and financial souls of the Sullivan family. They pulled cell phone records to map every tower ping. They analyzed banking transactions to see if money had moved in the shadows. They even went as far as seizing school bus surveillance and highway toll plaza footage for every vehicle leaving Nova Scotia. They were looking for a getaway, a movement, a flicker of life on a screen. Then came the physical evidence, or the strange lack of it. In the thousands of acres searched, only 2 items were ever found. On May 2nd, a piece of fabric identified as belonging to one of the children was found snagged in a tree about a kilometer from a house. 2 days later, a second piece of the same fabric was found in a refuse container at the very end of the family driveway. These 2 scraps of cloth are the only physical proof that Lily and Jack were ever there. But instead of providing answers, they created a paradox. If a child wandered a kilometer into the woods, how did another piece of their clothing end up in a trash bin at the edge of the road? Was it a trail left by a lost child, or a breadcrumb trail left by someone else? Forensic teams processed the fabric for DNA and degradation, but the results remained locked away in sealed files. The investigation was being handled with the resource allocation of a major homicide, yet remained officially classified under the Missing Persons Act. The tension was building. Was this a tragic accident or a perfectly executed crime? By the 8-month mark, the numbers behind the Sullivan case were staggering. Over 8,100 videos reviewed. More than 1,000 tips from the public processed. But perhaps the most haunting statistic involves the people closest to Lily and Jack. 7 polygraph tests were administered to the family and inner circle. In the world of true crime, we often expect a failed test to provide the breakthrough, the crack in the story that leads to a confession. But in the Sullivan case, the machines told a different story. Every single person who sat in that chair and took a conclusive test passed. They were found to be truthful. For investigators, this was a nightmare. When everyone is telling the truth, or at least when the technology says they are, and you still have no children, the investigative path narrows to a razor's edge. If the family didn't do it, and the woods didn't take them, what is left? This is a fundamental wrong that Staff Sergeant Rob McCamon spoke about. It's a case that doesn't just sit in a file on a desk. It follows the officer's home. In September 2025, the RCMP took a grimmer step. They deployed specialized cadaver detection dogs across a 40-kilometer radius. These dogs are trained to find what human eyes cannot: the scent of death buried deep beneath the earth or hidden in the thickest brush. The dogs searched for weeks. They didn't alert once. The silence of the dogs matched the silence of the woods. No bodies, no failed polygraphs, no smoking gun in the 8,000 videos. This is what makes the Sullivan case unprecedented. Usually, a massive search or a deep dive into forensics breaks a suspect or finder remains. Here, the more the police looked, the less they found. The community began to hold vigils, not just out of grief, but out of a desperate need to keep the light on a case that seemed to be slipping into the shadows of the unknown. While the public saw the search teams and the helicopters, the real battle was happening in the courtrooms and interview rooms. As 2025 drew to a close, unsealed court documents began to reveal the hidden fractures within the Sullivan household. This wasn't just a story about two missing children. It was a story about a family under immense pressure long before the 911 call was ever placed. Investigators began peeling back the layers of the family's daily routine. They discovered that Provincial Child Protection Services had actually visited the residence to investigate a report prior to the disappearance. A social worker had walked those same halls where Lily and Jack were last seen. Police tracked down this worker, searching for any detail, a look, a comment, a hidden bruise that might explain the vanishing. The family tree itself was complicated. Jack and Lily's biological father hadn't seen them in years, though he provided financial support until his employment changed months before they vanished. His reaction to the tragedy was one of total withdrawal. According to the children's grandmother, he refused to even speak their names, operating under a veil of, "If I don't hear about it, I don't have to think about it." Then there was a stepfather, who by October 2025 made a startling public pivot. At a vigil for the children, he stood before the community and declared that he no longer believed Lily and Jack were in the woods. He argued that the search had been too thorough. If they were there, they would have been found. It was a subtle but significant shift in the narrative. If they weren't in the woods, they had to be somewhere else. But the mother and stepfather remained firm, denying any involvement, their claims backed by the successful polygraph tests. Yet, the Crown dropped a bombshell in recent filings. While there were no reasonable grounds to believe a crime had occurred yet, they warned that as the investigation persists, it could turn criminal at any moment. The RCMP was pussyfooting, according to some experts, waiting for the evidence to catch up to their suspicions. As of early 2026, the Sullivan case has entered a strange legal limbo. It is being investigated under Nova Scotia's Missing Persons Act, a tool that allows police to bypass certain hurdles to find missing people. But there is a tension here. Criminologists like Michael Arfield, a former detective, have pointed out how novel and unusual this is. In almost any other case, if two children aren't found within a week, the file is slapped with a suspicious label and handed to a criminal task force. Why hasn't that happened here? Staff Sergeant McCamon's answer is a masterclass in investigative caution. He emphasizes that every move they make must be methodical. In Canada, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the ultimate gatekeeper. If the RCMP rushes in, treats a parent like a criminal without enough evidence, and then later finds a body, the entire case could collapse on a technicality. They are playing a long game, ensuring that if charges are ever laid, they will stick. But the long game is cold comfort to a community that sees 8,100 videos and 1,000 tips resulting in 0 arrests. Corporal Charlene Jordan Curl recently filed an affidavit stating that the RCMP is now leveraging technology-based investigative police techniques. This is coded language for the cutting edge of modern policing, perhaps advanced digital forensics, deep web analysis, or high-level DNA phenotyping. The strategy has shifted from the physical world to the digital and microscopic one. They're looking for information to support criminality. They aren't just looking for Lily and Jack anymore. They are looking for the mistakes someone might have made months ago. They are looking for the one digital footprint that didn't get erased. Because in a case where everyone passes a lie detector and the dogs find nothing, the only thing left is a data. But data is a cold trail to follow when the lives of 2 children are at stake, and the clock has been ticking for over 250 days. 8 months. It is a lifetime in a missing persons investigation. The helicopters have long since stopped flying. The 160 volunteers have gone back to their lives. But for the RCMP's Major Crime Unit, the Sullivan case is a ghost that refuses to be exorcised. As we stand in 2026, the mystery of Lily and Jack Sullivan remains one of the most baffling enigmas in Canadian history. We are left with a set of facts that refuse to fit together. We have fabric in the trees and fabric in the trash. We have a family that passed every test the police threw at them. We have a 40-kilometer radius of silent woods and a fundamental wrong that refuses to be corrected. The words of Chief Superintendent Dan Morrow continue to echo. I've never seen it across my career. When a man with 3 decades of experience in the dark corners of human nature says a case is unique, the world should listen. This isn't just a disappearance. It is a void. It is a reminder that despite our drones, our thermal cameras, and our forensic labs, a human being can still vanish into thin air if the circumstances are right or wrong. The RCMP remains committed. They are still pursuing every credible lead. They are still asking for that one tip, the 1,001st tip, that finally makes a map make sense. The case of Lily and Jack Sullivan is a haunting testament to the limits of modern investigation and the enduring power of a mystery. Was it a wandering that turned into a tragedy the dogs simply couldn't find? Or was it something far more calculated, a disappearance so perfectly executed that it baffled the best minds in country? Until a new piece of evidence emerges, or a secret is finally shared, the woods of Lansdowne Station will keep their secret. If you have any information, no matter how small, the Northeast Nova Major Crime Unit is waiting for your call. Because every child deserves to be found, and every mystery deserves an ending.